and the next 100. Welcome to Wine for the People, the happy hour, where, of course, for the next hour, we're not going to take ourselves as seriously as the wines, and it's pretty arguable whether or not we take wine seriously at all. I mean, who are we kidding? We take wine too seriously. Guys, we've got another amazing guest tonight, and one a little bit out of left field, sort of, but not really. It's actually we've had a few personalities that have come onto the show that have been born from both a love of wine, a love of research, but few, though, I'm going to say, are as well, firstly, completely well composed, and secondly, just die-hard hungry about this industry. Seriously, guys, I just got to read out this. I'm probably going to make you blush, man. I'm really sorry, but. Self-nicknamed, and I don't think it was kind of like great. He was going to get this nickname anyway. The Molecular Sommelier, head som at Penfolds McGill Estate, and of course the Wine Experience Lab, which is an amazing venture that we'll hear about as well. Wine writer, educator, judge, and co-authored 7 publications in leading academic and wine industry journals. Wow. Hey man, you did it, man! Guys, this is Marcell Kustos. Mate, thank you. Thank you for coming. First things first, we've got 10 quick questions to help the audience get to know the real you. Sure. But I want to get some wine into glasses, like straight away, because usually we have a wine cracked open. You've cracked open a bunch of wines already. This is something that, and guys at home, you know, we do our research before every guest that comes on the show. This didn't come up in my research. This was like this is news. This is like fresh. You're learning about this probably at the same time definitely same time I'm learning about this. You got a wine label, mate?
Yeah, and as you said, it's literally just off the shelf. We labeled the bottles last week, and well, it's pretty much the premiere of Ludo.
This is the premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what an honor to share the first couple of bottles with you.
Yeah, wicked. Let's do it. Let's start off. We'll share some wine, and we'll ask you 10 quick questions. And of course, straight into the comments, Kerry Carter and Mel, thank you so much for chiming in. Great to see you guys. Hope you are both very well. Now, Marcell, there are rules to 10 quick questions.
Oh God. You
can't sit on the fence. You have to choose. Choose. Yeah, they are difficult questions, but there is no wrong answer. We're not going to judge you. But firstly, taste or texture? Texture. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Correct. Tradition or innovation?
Innovation.
Interesting. Cool. Art or science?
Science.
Ah, cool. How quick was that? Winemaker or wine grower?
Wine grower.
Interesting. Oak or lees?
Lees.
This is it. Oh man, these
are good. Yeah.
These are great answers. Complementary flavors or contrasting flavors?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a weird question.
Oh, there's a good reason for this. You've spent a bit of time researching this.
Yeah, I would go for contrasting
flavors. Okay. Shiraz or Chardonnay?
Chardonnay.
Okay, cool. Okay. You are head som at Penfolds, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just so we got the right Marcell, that's all.
Penfolds makes Chardonnay.
Chardonnay. But this is Marcell's show, of course. So to wild ferment or not to wild ferment?
Well, if you don't mind me, I just want to clarify this question. Is it something I would prefer to make or what I would prefer to drink?
Oh, that's really interesting. How about both? How about like obviously there's 2 different answers.
Absolutely. So I would say that if I was to make my own wine, I would perhaps prefer inoculation for a number of reasons. But to choose a wine that I didn't have to deal with, just like pretty much choose what to drink and enjoy, I'm more than happy to go for white ferment.
Cool. Champagne or pet nat?
Champagne.
I'm pretty confident we've had 100% champagne.
Monday.
Oh, I wasn't there.
Monday.
Damn it.
Yeah. Wayne Aaron's straight up pet nat. No worries. Don't need that champagne stuff. Amazing. Seriously, he's the outlier. I think we all agree that when we met Wayne,
more ways than one.
Wayne defines outlier. Barossa or Mclarenville?
Well, I just poured some wine from Mclarenville in your glass, so
Mclarenville tonight.
Really, it is.
And a bonus question, and this is for anyone that follows your Instagram, which is linked in the description. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well over the course of the next hour. But what is the best wine to pair with a juicy steak?
For me personally, I would go with Northern Rhone Syrah.
What?
Northern Rhone Syrah.
Northern Rhone Syrah.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
And simply because that's probably my favorite wine to drink as well. And
okay,
it got the texture that you need. It got all the flavor it's need, all the savoriness to the juicy steak. I mean, as long as we are talking about a beef steak, not something else.
Yeah, no, this honestly, guys, like this is how this hour is going to go, because I was like, I'm not sure if you're aware, prior to us starting any of this, we actually started a perfume company.
All right.
So aroma molecules for me is like second nature. I was going to add in some really quirky questions like alpha ionone or beta ionone, of which the correct answer is gamma ionone. But mate, you're one of the most energetic people that I've literally ever read about, and that, for people who know me, is actually like I'm pretty high energy individual, but this is just ridiculous. First off, like, you know, when we do our research about any individual, and I'm really going to focus on you, like this whole thing's literally about you, the man, the som, and also the researcher, because I find you fascinating. Your first Twitter entries, like the first 100, are just you mapping your runs. You're like a hardcore runner. But then it progressed to you gradually becoming... Do you guys remember Foursquare? Remember Foursquare?
What, like the handball game?
No, not the handball game. There was an app called Foursquare where you could check in to places and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Before
I remember
Facebook
that.
killed it. But if you checked into a place with Foursquare enough, you became the mayor of that place. So then there's just this procession of Twitter entries of you just becoming the mayor of pretty much everywhere that you have ever been.
I'm very competitive.
And then you hit Vivino. When Vivino became a thing, you hit it hardcore. Like, it's actually something on your Twitter profile. You're like a Vivino
featured user, yeah, like a featured taster for Vivino, if you like.
Yeah.
I think I was at the right place at the right time, following my passion for wine, and I just found Vivino platform to be very useful. To actually have people who like buying wine or like drinking wine, what might find it difficult to actually buy wine for a number of reasons, and I think Vivino does a sensational job in helping those people. It's not every bottle shop or restaurant have a sommelier that could help the guests, right?
For sure.
So I just enjoyed Vivino, and I enjoyed the educational component of it, and to me Vivino was actually a platform to learn about wine and learn talking and writing about wine.
Of course, and you do it incredibly well. I was cruising through everything that you've done on Vivino actually, and it's utterly it's just remarkable. From there, you literally traveled the world researching food. Were you in the Netherlands for a while? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Then wine. When you hit wine, you hit it so hard. I have never seen anything like this. ASVO scholarships, the AWAC course, Len Evans. Any Len Evans? Not Len? Wine,
not yet.
wine judging, somming, doing vintage in several places. For those at home, you can't see this. He hit wine so hard that wine hit back at him, and a full hogshead of wine fell off a forklift onto his foot. He's actually walking around in a moon boot right now.
Yeah, true story.
So I'm a fan of high energy, but like, is it high energy? Because I mean, you're actually amazingly composed. Do you just have a really obsessive personality?
I'm not sure about that. I think, I think you are clearly energetic. Like, you're, fascinatingly extrovert person with a lot of energy. I think most of my energy is more introvert, I'm definitely. I just like doing like multiple things at the same time, and that's what really fascinates me. Like, I don't like feeling bored. I don't like feeling that I could have done something more. I could have done something better, and I think that's what drives me. I never do something for the sake of doing something. I never go 50%. I never want to do things like just fine. I want to, if I'm in something, I'm in 120%, and that's sort of my mentality to everything. Like, be it running, be it being a som, being a researcher, because that's what satisfies me, and in my mind, that's how I can, contribute in all those fields.
It's actually incredible because, when people say that sort of stuff, sometimes you just think they're big noting, but it's like with you, we just look at the scoreboard. It's it's incredible. It's incredible. So you grew up though, harvesting grapes on your family's property. Where was that?
That was in Hungary. So I'm from Hungary, and yeah. So I mean, Hungary is no different from like other countries in Europe, in the old world, especially the countryside of Hungary where I'm from. People just have like small vineyards planted in their backyard, and we make wine for daily consumption. So most Hungarians at some point of their lives would have done a harvest. They would have been invited by family member, friend of a family, or just like a friend to pick some grapes and then turn them into wine. And it's been like really sort of like a rustic, hands-off winemaking. So yeah, white fermentation, no oak, definitely no new oak, and just like almost like a noble style, ready to drink wine after like 3, 4, 5 months. And if we had enough, depending on the growing season, it could make it until next vintage.
So what do you reckon of Hungarian wine these days? Because they're starting to, and I think they've always made some pretty interesting wines, but they're starting to actually, you can find them now in Australia. Have you managed to find any Hungarian wine since you've been here?
Not as many as I would like to. In fact, a few years back, I had the idea that maybe I should look into importing Hungarian wine. And it hasn't happened yet.
When you start, I guarantee you just import them all. It's going to be anything holding you back.
I mean, that would be a thing that I might go, quality over quantity. But I mean, the thing is that these days it's becoming increasingly difficult to what not to buy, because Hungary had a very interesting but also very strange history. So Hungary had the very first official vineyard classification in the Tokaj region. So the famous Tokaj Yasszó was in fact the very first wine in the world that was being classified in 1737.
Really?
Which was before port classification. Yeah. But the main difference is that, port and the Douro Valley still claims to have the very first appellation, because what Hungary did, we had the first vineyard classification, grade first growth, second growth, third growth, and you name it. But we didn't necessarily have like regulated production and fermentable grape varieties. It was all about the vineyard classification, and mind you, that vineyard classification is not necessarily holds its stance anymore, because the criteria was susceptibility to botrytis, because Tokaj Yasszó is a botrytis infected sweet wine.
Yes.
And as of the early 2000s, there are a lot of dry white wines coming out of Tokaj that present sensationally well that diversity of the terroir. So all those different vineyards obviously translate into something very different in the glass. But it's not about like susceptibility to botrytis anymore. So there's a beautiful debate between the growers and the regional association at the moment, or I would say in the past, perhaps like 10 years at least. But yeah, so we had the first vineyard classification, and then fast forward to the 1950s. Russian occupation. After the Second World War, the Russians ended up staying, and that was very, very difficult for the Hungarian, not just wine, but also agricultural industry. Effectively, it was all about quantity over quality. So imagine that all grapes, white, red, everything all together, went into the state vat and was turned into wine, and then exported to all the Soviet states.
Just wine. It was just.
Exactly. It's like like a uniform.
Like Coca-Cola.
Exactly.
It's like, cool.
Exactly, and then sent into the Soviet states. So after that ended in 1990, effectively, the Hungarian wine industry, like quality wine industry, was reborn. So we are talking about a 30 years old fine wine industry, if you like.
Yeah,
Wine industry, yeah.
So can you still access pre-Soviet bottles?
You can. Well, as you can imagine, because there was such a long-standing tradition, especially in regions like Tokaj,
Yeah.
they would still make some wine in deep secrecy, and yeah, and you know, something like a Tokaj Essentia, like that's sort of like time-proof. You could taste bottles that are like 200 or 300 years old. So it's yeah, there are still bottles, and I think they sell for really high prices through auctions all around the world.
Speaking of making wine in deep secrecy, you're working at a place right now that's famous for a story of making wine in deep secrecy. How have you found the sort of transition across to obviously working now? As you from what I could tell, you haven't been doing a lot of somming work, you know, until and you're working for the big one, the Penfolds, the head buyer and head sommelier. How's the transition to that?
Well, I did work as a sommelier back in Hungary. So just after I finished my food engineering and wine production degree, that was sort of like again a passion that I followed after, like, you know, food and wine being part of my life as a child. Was straightway into the food and wine industry. But first I went into food industry, and then I was sort of somming as a side job, simply because I wanted to learn about it. And then I started to work with wine eventually, and came to Australia. That was sort of the real transition to me from food to wine. And you know, being I guess a newcomer to the Australian wine industry, I was exploring ways how I could find my way in. And I ended up going to lots of wine tastings, including Sommeliers Australia's wine tastings, where I met Bhatia Diraj, who used to be the head sommelier at Penfolds McGill. And he was very interested in learning more about wine science and the sensory science of wine that I happened to be doing a PhD on. And I just happened to be looking for sommeliers to have my research. So you know, I was like, well, mate, there is actually an opportunity where you know, I'm looking for sommeliers to have. So would you be interested? Of course. So he came over, and then we got along very well, built up a friendship. And when he departed to Sydney and was leaving Mclarenville Estate, he just asked me, like, hey, so I'm leaving. We are looking for another sommelier, and you got a good palate. You know about wine. You're clearly passionate about it. I think you would be great. And I'm like, well, thanks very much. I appreciate it, but I clearly, you know, haven't really worked at such high level yet. And I was like, don't worry about it. I send you the wine list, and I will mentor you in the first few weeks. And
well, I've not seen the wine list. Is it just Penfolds and Krug? No. That's my understanding. Because you're also a wine buyer. What is Penfolds buying?
Well, we do have, I would say, a sensationally great champagne list. Like, it's a very deep and wide champagne list. At any given time, we would have more than 100 champagnes listed. So that's, I guess, something that maybe not many people would expect.
Nope.
But look, the other thing is that, you know, having the ability to work with Penfolds wines, and we are talking about Penfolds wines, like, it's not just like the current trees. We are talking about very deep cellar going back to the 1950s, for fortified wine even to the 1940s. You know, that's a very great opportunity, and I feel humbled to have this opportunity even today, because again, like, coming into Australia's wine industry, the only brand I knew of was Penfolds. And when I first had the opportunity to taste St. Henri, I think it was in the first maybe like 3 months after I came to Australia, I was amazed. And you know, it was always something that back when I lived in the Netherlands, I would go into the bottle shop and I would see an RWT or a Scenari, the top of the shelf, and being a student, that was something out of my reach clearly. And I didn't even think about one day having the opportunity to be associated with the brand, because it felt so out of reach. And here I am. So. But going back to your question, the other thing that I actually do buy is sweet wines, fortified wines. And that's also a bit of a tribute because Penfolds established itself on obviously brandies and fortified wines. Yeah. And I think it's a really important and unfortunately somewhat overlooked category.
Of course, yeah.
I do love sweet wines coming from Hungary, obviously it's no surprise. And I do love fortified wines as well.
Well, that's not the only thing that you do. You did something that I find really, really fascinating. I mentioned it just before, but check this out on the screen here. These things that I found sort of popped up. So what is that? What are we looking at?
Well, we are looking at a few different things. Well, with the Semillon.
Is that Krug with steak?
Yeah, that's Krug with steak. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
and Tyrrell's VAT 1?
Yes, Tyrrell's VAT 1, where it was a 2010 from memory. Yeah, so slightly aged. Last starting with the Tyrrell's, Hunter Semillon.
Of course, yeah.
Say no more. More. I think again, coming from abroad and having explored Hunter Valley Semester novelty, which is something like I never had before. I was amazed from the first moment, and that one is obviously the pinnacle of that. And I've been completely amazed by tasting that wine every single time. And I just wanted to promote, I would say, the versatility of Semillon. I could go on and on, like what you could do with I don't know, like a 20 years old Semillon, but unfortunately it's so hard to get these days because most Semillon would be sold within the production year. But what really happens in the bottle in a few years is true magic. Like, you get like all those like aroma compounds developing very slowly that were originally not there, and or at least I wouldn't have expected them to come out over bottle maturation, because we are talking about wines that never seen old normally.
Yeah.
And when I tasted the first aged Hunter Semillon, which would have been a Mont Pleasant Elizabeth 94, I believe. And I could smell this like nice, sort of like toasty, smoky aroma component, and it was I think it was like an options game, I believe. So I was like, well, it really has oak on it. No, it doesn't. God.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Like, like how is it even possible? Yeah, and so the other thing that what you see there is obviously oysters, and the oysters tend to be creamy, and once you have mature Semillon, that obviously develops textural richness, and that what I really wanted to play with, and obviously some honey and like different toast aromatics. But if you go with a young Semillon, then you might have some slight greenness, which obviously comes from methoxypyrazines, and oysters tend to have also like a little amount of that greenness that
we got this little button here I got to press now. It's called Getting Basic. So methoxypyrazines, there's an interesting word.
It's not basic.
So can you get it more basic for us, please? So methoxypyrazines, I know what they are, but I did the same sort of study as you've probably done. You've probably done a hell of a lot more than I have. Is this what we're talking about when it comes to a molecular wine pairing?
That's part of it, but what I really like considering is more basic things. So I would say that the aromatic molecules, molecular similarity or contrast is really the pinnacle of food and wine pairing or food and beverage pairing. Simply because when it comes to something really subjective like food and wine, there's a really high individual variation. In other words, what you smell and taste might be very different from what I smell and taste. And it's not about being better or worse, or having like more or less taste buds. It has to do a lot with our culture, upbringing, our
Totally.
like a lot of things.
So things you can't control, really.
Absolutely. So like, how do you account for that in research? Like, that's a very difficult question, but I don't want to sidetrack. I'm not sure if we are.
Well, but you have done research on it.
Yes.
Let's look at this. Intertwined. What makes food and wine pairings appropriate? And you're named here. Like, this is so food and wine pairings. Like, based on your findings, are there any wacko wine pairings? Things that just blow your mind. Things that are just like, this shouldn't work, but trust me, it works.
Well, not from that paper. I think what that paper really did, or contributed, I think, to research, I would like to believe at least, is that there has been always this question: shall we start with food or start with the wine?
Mm-hmm.
And I could actually demonstrate that you should really start with the wine.
Yes!
Right? So,
Always did anyway.
We
changed.
know. We know this. You get to the restaurant, ask for the wine list, you determine the wine, that determines the food.
Yeah, but to take that even further, for instance, at the restaurant setting, when you have food and wine pairing, it's very crucial actually to have the wine served before the food. And
Really?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is that food changes the flavor of the wine more than the other way around.
Okay.
So effectively, what really happens if I wanted to like break it down into a molecular level is that once you put food and wine together, you add a lot of texture. So
Yes.
Imagine when you have like yogurt, like a vanilla yogurt, you have like a more runny yogurt and you have a more creamy yogurt. Which one will be more vanilla, or which one will be more, I guess, which one will have higher flavor intensity?
Yeah, right. I would have thought the one with more texture to it, like that.
No, actually, it's the other one, because texture will mask flavor.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So to say it in a very basic way. So what happens when you put food and wine together? There will be always some sort of like mixing happening in your mouth, and what really happens, all those like food particles will subdue the flavor of the wine. So it's most likely, actually, scientifically speaking, that food can screw up the wine, but not the other way around.
This is what I've been saying about Thai food and Riesling for a long time. Just like, stop destroying your Riesling.
That's a good one.
So, would you entertain us for a second and help us? I actually had. No, don't have it. No, I was going to get you to pair us. I was going to get you to pair some wine for us with some food. I had some pork crackle, but maybe next time. What do you think people need to know about wine pairings? What are like the rules of thumb? What are like the easiest? What are the ones that you tell people, like, you've got 10 seconds to tell it and they're going to save the world with their wine choices, wine and food pairings? What's the best piece of advice you could give?
Oh God. I would say, as general advice, drink what you like. I think it's very important. I don't think that, this day and age we should talk about rules.
Yeah.
And yeah, trust me on that. I'm a scientist.
Is it because there is obviously more, and this is the same sort of deals, like, if you want to mix your Molly Duca and Coke, like go ahead. Why not?
Go ahead. Like, why not? Yeah.
Because obviously there's enjoyment in the brain that's linked to whatever's in your glass. There's no way to be able to conform enjoyment. You can't force enjoyment. It just kind of happens based on a myriad of factors.
Like, how do you define enjoyment? Again, like, what your enjoyment is may not be my enjoyment, and it actually takes us back to like genetical differences between people. Thinking about something very simple like taste perception. One of the basic tastes is 5 basic tastes, bitter taste.
Yes.
Would you believe that on average 40% of the global population is bitter blind, which means that they are unable to taste bitterness below a certain threshold?
That's why they buy Campari. Fernet.
Do you guys
yeah, we do. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so like, that's why if someone would want to have, tannic red wine with oysters, who am I to tell that person, no, you shouldn't?
Yeah, right.
Right. So simple as that, or again, like it could be like a cultural thing. Like certain cultures would enjoy burning alcohol. There was a food and wine pairing study from Korea, I believe, and they were pairing really spicy food with red Bordeaux, and they loved it. And if you think about it, that's sort of like burning spiciness is part of their cuisine. And for us, Westernite palates, having that burning sensation, sort of like elevated with the tannins and the higher alcohol of the Bordeaux, may not be that appealing. But for a different culture, it's something really delicious.
See, I would have thought that the lactone from oak in those wines was pairing very well with the heat. But obviously, have you ever had really hot, spicy food, then like a can of Coke after?
Yeah.
And it's very painful?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, effervescence, the bubbles are actually pain sensation. Like they're literally pain sensation, like a textural mouthfeel pain sensation, to be very exact.
As in the actual, like just without heat or anything like that, just bubbles are a pain.
Yeah.
So,
but without having the spiciness, we find it somewhat like attractive. Like, there is that level of pain when you know it's painful, but you still go for it. That's
masochism.
Yeah, but
cool and normal. He's a scientist. I love that. So firstly, we're going to get on to some blind tasting because we're halfway through, mate. And I want to know what we were just tasting because that was fantastic. It was just so smooth. That was easy. That was amazing. It feels like an amazing silken Grenache.
Well, it's actually Shiraz.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, done well. That's insane.
Thank you. So it's a Shiraz from Mclarenville, from White's Valley, so one of the sub-district of Mclarenville. It's literally next to. Thank you. So literally next to like Aldingham. So the vineyard receives a bit of a sea breeze, like a cooling effect. Usually the grapes get ripe like 2 weeks after the valley floor. And what we did on this one, so like very traditional winemaking. They stemmed the grapes, crushed the berries, and then matured everything in seasoned oak hogsheads, and that was it. Unfiltered, unfined. We didn't take away anything. We are talking about I would say more moderate style, so 13.8% alcohol, and transparent, honest Shiraz from one of the sub-regions of Mclarenville.
That's amazing. So these are available now?
Yes. So if you like some, please hit on Drink Ludo.
Which is Instagram.
Yep.
It's in the description for you guys.
And just send us a direct message.
And how much did you make? Is there plenty going around?
Not too many. We are talking about like 250 bottles each.
250
500 ml bottles?
250 500 ml bottles each.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really micro production. It's super limited. Once it's gone, it's gone.
It's also the wine that broke his foot.
Yeah, well, that was actually the next vintage 2019. So I'm completely in peace with these two guys here.
Cool.
I love it when yields come down to kilos.
Yields come down to kilos.
No tons, kilos.
Yeah. All right, comments are going down. Mate, have you ever played the blind tasting game before? I'm sure you have.
The options game?
The options game?
Yep.
Yeah. Would you like to play options? Would you like to ask the questions on this one? Or Noah can? Your call.
Well, you can go ahead if you like.
Yeah. No. This is your wine. This is the one you brought. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to ask you any questions, mate.
Yeah, then obviously.
Yeah.
Then I go.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. It smells incredible. Straight off the bat, herbaceous, stemmy, whole bunchy. It smells amazing. When I say it feels, I mean it smells. There's just, for me, you talk about like taste and texture. Something about aromatics just immediately frames everything for. That's incredible. That's a lot of fun. Not what I thought it wasn't originally. Smells, you know, it's one of those things. It smells like Pinot, probably Syrah. You know, just like heat on the palate and sort of bulbous. Have you ever tried Hervé Suot?
Yes.
Utterly amazing. Declassifies a lot of his own wines. It kind of gives me similar vibes, except lower acidity. Cool. Let's play. Let's play.
All right. So, old word or new word?
I'm going old world.
And this is a new word.
Oh no! That straight. It strikes us out. It's amazing. This is wicked cool.
Cool. Yeah. So, ready for the next step?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I don't think this is a Penfolds wine. If it is, I am so impressed. Okay, next step. It is New World.
Yeah, it's New World. So, yeah, we got 3 options here. We got obviously Australia, we got New Zealand, and California.
Okay. I'm going Aussie.
You're right.
Yeah, cool. No, because it could have been Californian. I just didn't have the acidity for New Zealand, I thought. This is kind of mind-boggling, this one.
Well, so what's next? A sub-region or region? Sorry.
We go states? We can go states.
Or states. Yeah, so is it South Australia? Is it Victoria? Or is it New South Wales?
Shit. I want to stay in SA, but I think I'm playing the man here. I'm not playing the game. There is amazing stuff like this out of Victoria. There's a higher concentration of wines like this. A really whole bunch out of Victoria. The acidity is a little bit low. Maybe it's a little bit warm vintage. We've had 2 or 3 warm vintages in a row, so I'm going to go Victoria.
I can see that. I mean,
this is preceding you're wrong though.
Yeah, look, there was a reason why I came Victoria, because I could see similarities between this wine and some other wines.
Red herring.
A certain region, but it's from SA.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So then next question. Is it Kangaroo Island? Is it Adelaide Hills, or is it Mclarenville?
Fuck, man. I'm going Adelaide Hills.
It is Adelaide Hills.
Oh, thank God.
Man,
it felt like the Charlotte Hardy.
Oh yeah, the Stoke Guru Shiraz.
Guru. Yeah. Kangaroo Island. Really beautiful.
Yum.
Cool. Hills, stemmy, something or other. Okay. All right.
Well, now I have to think where I take it from here.
Varieties? Is it a single variety?
Is it?
Is it? I think it is.
Okay, it is.
It is. Okay.
Is it? It is.
Okay. Cool. I love it.
No, I wanted to hear what you think.
Yeah. No. That's a hard one. Like picking a blend that plays a variety. This speaks clearly of a variety, but I could be way wrong. Like, it's just palate, weight, and shapes leading me.
Well, I mean, since you are in the hills, but obviously it could be Pinot Noir, could be Syrah or Shiraz if you like. Could it be maybe Gamay?
The delivery is really good. Yeah. I like it. It's like, oh yeah, the way you said it made it that. Oh wait, no, it's great.
Damn it. This is tough. It's a tough one. Tough. Look, I'm going to have to go with my gut. I'm going to go with my gut on it. The way that you said Gamay makes me feel like you're trying to trick me like it is Gamay. But I'm going Syrah. I'm going Syrah on this. It felt like Syrah from the get-go.
It's a Pinot.
Jesus. It's not in there. Oh my God. This is so good. It smelled like a Pinot. But it's really quite robust on the palate. Really fleshy. Like, this is cool. So fair degree of ripeness. This is wicked cool. Okay. Yeah, right. Vintage.
Vintage, yeah. So do you guys speak like an exact vintage, or should I give you like
Give us 3 options, or I can just try and grab a stab on it.
All right, so is it 2018?
Mm-hmm.
Is it 2013?
Mm-hmm.
Or 02?
Really? 18?
It's 02. It's 2002.
You are kidding me. Now that's the bombshell. There is no way in hell I would ever have chosen this to be an 18-year-old wine. No way. What does this look like? Yeah, okay. Yeah. That is insanely fresh. Yeah. What is this? What is this? This is a
Do you want to give them producer options?
There's only a handful of producers that I could possibly tell you could do this from 2002.
Yeah.
In the Adelaide Hills. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the one that just resounds so strongly that would make wine like this. Like there is a whole bunch like gone to town level on this. And in 2002, you got to remember. Well, firstly, I was 12. And secondly, like we're not even talking about natural selection theory. All this, they're not even around. You know, like the whole natural wine movement hasn't even started. You know, this is Ashton Hills would be the only one that would have started at that point that I feel would have maybe Barrett, maybe Lindsay Barrett. Wow.
Yeah, I was going to give you Ashton Hills as one of the options.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Well,
nothing's coming to mind.
Okay, so you're settled on Ashton Hills?
I'm settled on Ashton Hills.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the bottle.
No. 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 Seriously?
I really just want to read out the front labeling on this because I find it really funny because it's open fermenters, hand plunged, cold soaked, natural fermentation, unfined, unfiltered. That's the natural wine dogma, and it's on a Penfolds bottle.
Holy shit, Batman! Seriously?
Yeah, I was actually very glad when you said it. I wouldn't think it's Penfolds, right? Because,
because Penfolds has a reputation, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just gobsmacked, man. Like in 109 episodes, I haven't been this gobsmacked before. This is a Penfolds wine that tastes like it came out of the hands of Lucy Margot. Seriously,
let me like
Galma.
Yeah, Gareth Belton, maybe.
Look, like what you have to know about this label Cellar Reserve is that it was actually brought to life by Peter Gago, who is obviously a chief winemaker right now, and that was his sort of like passion project that started out in '97 with a Pinot Noir from the hills. And it sort of eventually became the playground of our winemakers. So now there are some really interesting varieties like Sangiovese, Tempranillo, Fiano, Traminer, Gewürztraminer from northern Tasmania, and so on. So it is one of the wines that, again, you won't find in retail, but we actually have back vintages that we pour at the restaurant, and again, that's also a little playground for me to, show something unexpected.
Do you know where's the vineyard?
It would be always a single vineyard.
Yeah.
Every year might be a different one. I couldn't exactly tell you which vineyard it was in 2002, but it's always a single.
I'm still stuck on Penfolds and natural fermentation existing on the same label.
Dude, it's so sick, hey? It's everything hand plunged.
The last paragraph of what you just said, I didn't hear because I'm just like, it's playing out of my head over and over again. The thing I'm most impressed with though is Penfolds was so like ardent on the claret bottle that they just kept it anyway. Don't worry about it. It won't be a thing. This is the most amazing wine. This is insane.
But I'm glad I could surprise you after so many episodes.
This is just ridiculous, and I am like This is tears of happiness, man. This is, I didn't think Penfolds had it in them.
My favorite Penfolds wine of all time.
This is my favorite Penfolds wine. Yeah. This is up there with, like, you know, we talked about, and we're going to talk about Marcell de Somme. Yeah. Because I want to know Somme Life. Have you heard of this hashtag Somme Life?
I'm using it, yeah.
Yeah. You know, we talk about this other hashtag called BLE, Big Label Energy. You know, sometimes when you want to impress your other Somme mates, you just go and buy a bottle of Brunken Ellison's Magma or, you know, Radicon or something like that. Big Label Energy. This has Big Label Energy. This actually, I think we haven't done this in a while. I'm not even sure think this is. Yeah, Big Label Energy.
That's so good.
We haven't had Big Label Energy on here for a little while, and that there takes the cake. A Penfolds wine, hand plunged, natural fermentation, Pinot Noir. Like, did this just happen? Did you just was this like an old bottle in the restaurant you just had me on? This is
I really hope there was no ads in this as well.
The fact that it's 2002 and I was like 2018, it's like fresh as a daisy. Like, this is wow. People just write off Penfolds without even knowing a thing about them, only just assuming such a rookie error. Yes, Matthew, I'm a rookie. No, absolutely no. But Penfolds have released things like, you know, Silla Reserve Fiano. They've done some really great stuff. They established, indeed, we actually, Penfolds established one of the main vineyards that we actually source from. They don't own it anymore. They sold it off for various reasons, but you know, they were planting Dolcetto Sangiovese in Polish Hill River, like on the hallowed turf in Clare Valley, in 1990.
Oh wow!
You know, they were doing some really utterly amazing things, and of course, you know, 12 years later, they made a wine that 18 years after that was going to blow my mind.
Yeah.
So what's your take on Somme Life? What is Somme Life?
Well, look, for me, I think it's just like remaining to be a student, because I think being a Somme and being an ambitious Somme, you know, I do a lot of tasting, I do a lot of obviously wine education, both as a student and also trying to actually give something back. And that was sort of one of the results of the lockdown, and then my injury, that I got a little bit more time to spend on, let's say, social media. So I started to write some educational posts that I found that, you know, if I have to write about something, I will have to do my research again, I will have to learn again, and of course I can also give something back and perhaps tell some good stories and valuable information to others. But the other thing to me is that being a Somme, it's not about you. Like, you should completely leave your ego at the door. Like, whenever I go to work or when I really do anything, I leave my ego, and all of a sudden, you know, being a Somme, I think, is actually, it's actually a wine server, really. If we wanted to like really simplify it, we are there to create experiences. Sommeliers are not necessarily winemakers, are not necessarily chefs. But we talk about wine, we talk about food, but we are really there to connect the two and you know, provide a memorable experience. So I think that what really is to me to be a sommelier, to create those experiences.
It was not all about listening to hip hop and drinking baller bottles of wine and eating hot chicken.
I have no problem with that, but
first growth 50 Cent.
Well, tell us about here. I noticed that you're playing around with a little bit of research here. The matter of place, sensory and chemical characterization of fine Australian Chardonnay and Shiraz wines of provenance. Do you believe in terroir?
I do believe in terroir, but I think what we should talk more about is what goes into terroir. Like, what are the different elements or the components of terroir?
Do you reckon it's dynamic? Like, terroir in Australia is different to terroir in France, but the components might alter based on a variety of different factors?
Yeah, I would say that it's certainly dynamic, because terroir is never static. Like, it's a never changing concept. But I think depending on which region, not necessarily like which country, but which region we are, the dominance or the importance of the elements of the terroir. So when we talk about elements of terroir, I'm talking about the climate, the soil, the human intervention, and all of that sort of going into the product. So we have this sort of like perpetual circle. And depending on the region, you know, winemaking or human intervention, if you will, might play a smaller or a larger role. And soil and climate, again, might play a smaller or larger role, depending on where we are at. So I wouldn't say that it would be so different in Australia. It really depends on the region, and I would even say it depends on the winery.
Totally.
So when we talk about wineries as pretty much like brands, it's all about the winery. It's the winemaker's decision. What's you know, his or her philosophy? Should it be like more terroir driven, as they like saying, which is like all about the soil, the climate, the vineyard, and then very minimal human intervention? Or should it be more like a sort of like chateau style? When it's all about the winemaking, you don't necessarily talk about single vineyard, but you talk about very high quality grapes and you know, the best possible winemaking to make the best possible wine in their minds from those grapes.
Do you think that we've accurately locked down and understood Australian terroir?
I think something has started, and it's certainly going somewhere, so it's in progress. And what I've experienced during my research is that a lot of regions and winemakers are really keen to actually take this further. Obviously, there are geographic indications already, 65 if I'm not wrong at the moment. But I think there is certainly a push to actually break them down into like further sub-regions and like official sub-appellations. But like how and when and to what extent it might happen, I think that's the real question. And it's certainly very exciting to be part of that. I don't know, what's your view on this?
Okay. I'm asking the questions. I think you know, we exist on the you know, firstly just looking purely at soil. We exist on a gigantic island that has been void of any other contact with another landmass for quite some time. The last one was the major one was 150 million years ago, which is pretty much the age of the continental United States, at least the soil itself. The more recent one was 65 million years ago, when Antarctica cleaved off the Flinders Ranges, leaving what we know now as the Flinders Ranges. And I think that's inherently fascinating that happened, you know, the age of Italy ago. And, you know, we probably have a really interesting story to be able to tell, at least a vinner story about that land. You know, there's quite often, you know, we fall into the trap of, you know, because we have a French variety and we take French techniques to be able to mimic. There's a fine line between replication and reverence of old world styles. And then there's this other line, which is very erratic, that a lot of winemakers go down. And it involves breaking the rules entirely and really throwing you know, your line off into the outer realms of just figuring out raw creativity and coming up with something of your own. I think we're only just starting to do that. But evidently Penfolds is doing it 18 years ago. So. Mate, we're like 5 minutes to go. Okay. And we got another blind tasting to go as well. Now, I'm not going to make you get up out of your chair, no, especially when you're wearing a moon boot. I'll go. Would you like to point? Oh no, Noah's going to make sure I don't even look at the bottles. Would you like to point to a bottle? Which one are you getting the good vibes from?
Let's go with the middle one, please.
Here's a really good one. Paul Finn's just chimed in. Excellent question, Paul. And one I think I could answer as well. If you use a cultured yeast, can you really claim that you are making a wine to reflect the terroir? But my perspective on this, I'd like to know yours as well. Firstly, I was ardently against inoculation and utilizing any kind of you know, wild ferment. Until I met an amazing individual, a guy called John Hughes. John Hughes is behind a wine brand called Riesling Freak, and he is really into Riesling, guys. You jump on his website and have a look, because his Rieslings are next level. He inoculates every one of his ferments. Sorry, what were you going to say, Noah?
I was like, he makes 10 and that's it.
He makes 10.
10 Rieslings and only Riesling.
It's incredible. and he inoculated his wines. We're having a tasting, and I think there was a sommelier, talk about some life. It's like, why do you do this? Very similar question that you just asked, Paul. And his answer was the first time I've ever actually had a decent answer to that question, which was, well, look, what I'm trying to do here is showcase, Riesling's interpretation of the site. So we're choosing the same yeast across everything because we know that yeast can drastically change the flavor of the wine. So we want to be able to control that one variable so we can see Riesling on that site, Riesling on that site, Riesling on that site. Yes, the yeast is a part of the inherent terroir, I guess. And that really comes down to, and this is, I guess, the next level of understanding and appreciation of things like yeast. You've got to select the right yeast. There is a yeast, for example, that we sort of shame a little bit here called QA23. It's an aromatic yeast, and it produces basically flavors of frangipani and whatnot. It also has what's called killer factors. So it will actually, it's been purposely bred to kill any other yeast out there. So it's very hard for any sort of two things to grow in there at the same time. So yeah, I probably don't like those yeasts. What we call selective yeasts is the more particular example of it. But then there are other yeasts that don't have killer factors, and some winemakers will do like a little bit of wild fermentation prior to an inoculation. So it's horses for courses. I know the way that we want to make wine is sort of similar to you saying before. Am I making the wine or am I drinking the wine? Making the wine can be very, very hard, while fermentation can be very, very difficult. But can you say you got a wine that tastes a place? It's even some of the best natural winemakers in the world use things like Pierre de Couve, which is it is technically an inoculation anyway, but inoculation of wild ferment of one particular Saccharomyces.
And then, you can also think about that, for instance, the place where you actually start your fermentation, let's say a winery. And that winery may be like, several tens or like, 100 years old. That will have a particular microphore anyway. But what if it's a contract facility where part of the winemakers would choose to inoculate and some others not? So most likely that your spontaneous white ferment will get one of those commercial yeast anyway. So in that case, why not to choose what you really want? So in that case, if you want to choose a more neutral yeast, why not to choose that? We use FX10 for these, and actually it's a double inoculation. What I didn't tell you is that Ludo is a collaboration between 3 wine scientists.
Oh dear.
So we did our PhDs together, and one of us, Anna, actually did her PhD on non-Saccharomyces, like wild yeast strains, microbiology, and she found an amazing yeast that actually produces lactic acid, so converts part of the sugar into lactic acid, and that way obviously produces natural acidity, but also lowers the alcohol. So so we have here a double inoculation, starting off with that Lachance yeast, and then second inoculation with a very neutral Saccharomyces.
When you have a look at beer, though, like beer, beer is heavily controlled. Like the most people that know the inner workings of how a brewery sort of operates and how a winery operates, they could be further apart. That said, there are plenty of breweries and gozes and sours that are farmhouse ales. But that's a really tricky. It is a tricky question. Like I said, it is horses for courses when it comes to inoculations. Listen, there is a really strong justification for, if you're striving for a wine that tastes of a particular place, to go towards wild fermentation. I think that's the easiest way. But the thing that's becoming a lot more, I think, apparent in the industry at the moment is one person's wild fermentation is definitely different to another person's wild fermentation.
Absolutely.
And that really ruins it for consumers, because it takes one person just kind of taking the piss to kind of ruin it for everyone else. And it is like we've been making wine for at least a little while now. It's tough. But what is tough, even more tough, is guessing what the hell this wine is. All right, so let's play. No, comments are down.
Comments down. Audience already knows. Is this a new world wine or an old world wine?
I go with old world.
I agree. I'm gonna take a stab at Old World.
For sharks, this is Old World. Is this wine from Spain, France, or Germany?
I was getting German vibes. Straight off the bat.
Straight up, yeah. Agreed.
Same, because it's German. It tastes, to be fair, it tastes really German.
It tastes, I know it sounds weird, but it's just like linear and driven, and there is a pristineness.
Precision.
There's a, I don't want to say there's a purity. There is a straight line. With
it's precision.
Precision.
All really good German wines just taste so precise. Since it's made by Germans. Alrighty, let's go straight to subregions. Let's go Mosel, Rheinhessen, or the Rheingau.
This is something that the old MW is going to teach me. German wine and Loire Valley. They're just the two things that I just need to learn, you know?
Yeah.
What do I know about those? This is an atypical example of this. This isn't a very stereotypical example. This sits sort of left field, and there's a residual and a Lee's age thing going on.
Do you get much residual on this one?
Yes, yeah. Only because
a lick.
Yeah, I would be surprised to learn the residual of this if you want to do a bit of cheeky research, because I reckon this is the thing with German wines. You're like, look, there's residual sugar here, and we would think, oh, it's like 4 grams. I reckon this is mighty. I reckon it's really a tempering of the acidity more so than it is an overt sweetness. There is something wacko about this.
Well, I go with Rheingau.
Yeah, Brendan just dodged the question entirely. And started talking about residual.
I'm going Rheingau as well.
This is Mosel.
Wow.
God, wow.
Okay. I doubled down on my residual question. It's like something stupid. I reckon it's like 10 grams. I reckon. That's the hard thing. That's the Somm life thing, isn't it? Like when you get German Riesling, there's a new question. There's like a new question in options. It's like, okay, Old World, New World, you know, what country, what sub-region, what variety. Oh, and then it's like residual sugar, definitely if it's German Riesling. Well, we have options for variety, or are we? I mean, I'm pretty. Oh, I want to have
It's Riesling.
I just wanted to win some dignity points. The training wheels points, we'll call them.
Alrighty.
Can't find it.
I have found it. I'm trying to. Yeah. What do you reckon? Do you reckon it's? Yeah. Well, yeah. What do you reckon?
The teens. It could be pushing into the teens, man.
Do you reckon it's dry, half dry, or off dry?
It's half dry. It's definitely half dry. It just depends on whether it's like that in that 8 to 15 realm. And I think it's like in there. I really think it's like 9-ish, 9 to 10. Dry. You going dry? You going, bone dry?
Bang! This is bone dry. This is Trocken.
Trocken?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, right. So it's got up to
7.
Could be up to 7.
Up to 7. So it's in the realm where like a lot of people like don't actually pick it up. It's really hard for most people to pick up under 10 grams residual sugar per litre. So
I don't know. It's just something that there is a linear sort of quality to it, but it's like really quite bulbous. Like it's some decent. Well, I suppose global warming, affects everywhere, including the Mosel. Well, Marcell, we're like well over time. We're like done. Yeah. I got more questions here. I got more questions. But I'm going to finish with one question. Just one question. Is it possible to be too granular with analysis and science? And is there still room left for artistic endeavors that hint at a mystery that science can't explain?
Oh God, you just left like a very difficult question to finish. Look, I think there's certainly room for being like more artistic and being creative, and I think it sort of ties into a different avenue, which is like almost like creating a more applicable research communication. it's like instead of like being very granular and like, you know, sometimes like overly factual about your results, I think it's important to think about what that means to the industry, how they could actually apply it, or, you know, how actually what they can do with it. And I think what I find is that this is the point when there is a fair bit of room for creativity and being a bit more artistic, and actually bringing in my personal winemaking experience or sommelier experience, the way I talk about wine, the way I think might be important, and use that experience to actually interpret the data. Of course, there is like a scientific, there are scientific guidelines when you want to publish in scientific journals, but then there is another avenue, which is like industry journals, and I think that's also another important avenue, and that certainly gives us more room.
All right, we're going to have to finish on that. Henry is waiting to hit the go button for Applewood and start streaming as well, but mate, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And that Penfolds wine, that is the
we had some good wine tonight.
That
it's
is
been good.
Yeah, that's in my top 3. 109 episodes, mate. Top 3.
Oh, thank you.
Comfortably.
That
is freaking next level.
Didn't expect it.
Oh, well, I certainly didn't expect that. Noah, of course, thank you very much for emceeing and producing tonight. Live audience, Lise and Richard, thank you so much for being awesome live audience. Participation, of course, for swapping quick glasses around, and Noah as well for choosing the right wine to trip us all up.
Thank you.
Guys, we'll be back. Actually, we won't be next Monday and Wednesday. This will actually be the first time you'll be hearing about this. Actually, it'll be pre-recorded shows. We're actually going to be heading up north about 6 or so hours, and at least 3 hours into zero reception. So this is me recording a message to say that you know, like I'm intending to do that trip, and you know, hopefully I'll be back one day. But we will be doing some pre-recorded shows at the same times. We just needed to get out of here so we can actually do some filming for a very, very special project that we're launching in a couple of weeks' time. I've got to remain relatively tight-lipped about it. But it is a very, very, very important and very special project, 4 years in the making. And so we're doing some really interesting filming work. But having no reception means we can't do any live streams. So we are going to be doing some pre-recorded shows. But until such time, in a couple of weeks, we're back with another amazing guest, of course. Thank you very much for being an amazing, amazing audience. And Christian Canala, I have noticed your comment coming. I'll ask Marcell off camera, and I'll actually get back to you with a written response to that. But is a true wild ferment achieved in a winery with yeast cells and services other than fruit? We're going to debate that and get back to you. Anyway, until such time, guys, have a great night.